So yeah, look, we're starting off this kind of stay in, stay well webinar series. You know, we're kind of conscious that we're back into lockdown again. We're coming into the winter months where it just feels a little bit harder this time around. So I'm delighted to be able to present this today. So I was gonna do more on a coping with COVID kind of thing, but I think we've kind of done enough of that. So this is going to be an introduction to some kind of sports psychology skills that you guys can all take on, and you can start applying and start working on now before you get back into the pool. Because what's great about psychology is, even though a lot of it really only comes into play, well, some of it comes into play the day of your races, a lot of it can actually be done in advance, and it is a skill that you have to learn. So why not use this extra time to actually work on a skill you may not usually work on? So we'll just talk about that today. So just make sure my slides, there we go. Okay, so first we're going to look at a little bit of coping strategies around COVID, and they're not going to be specific to COVID. They're going to be specific, obviously, to the situation we're in, but there are also strategies you can take on and forward into your swimming as well. So that's what we're going to look at first, and then it'll be more performance-specific strategies. So I always really like to start with this image, and it's an image of, so imagine at the moment 2020 has felt like a bit of a write-off for all of us. You could kind of describe that desolate, dry, cracked looking landscape as 2020, and that little flower is going to be you guys coming out of it with something positive. Even though it was a tough year all around, I found it tough. I've been working in this office, in my home office, since the start of March, and I'm missing that human contact. There is an opportunity to take some positives from it, and that's what we're going to talk about today, is maybe getting some psychological skills you guys may not have had exposure to before. So the first way to do that is to actually look back at the first lockdown. So the first lockdown that happened kind of from March up until about May. And this is something that I would do with athletes anyways, this idea of kind of looking back and reflecting and learning from, you know, from competition performances, from training sessions. Like it's a process of reflection, of debriefing, whatever way you want to call it, and taking the lessons from that situation to make the next time better. So why don't we do that with lockdown? Why don't we learn from the first lockdown what went well, what didn't go well, and how can we make this time around better? We're back out of the pool again. We're back to trying to do our training from home. How can we learn from that time? So some of the things to think about for yourselves, and this is just for you guys to start thinking about now, is, you know, what are the positive? And if you want to put it into the chat box, if you want to make it interactive, by all means do. I'm still not used to this format, so I'm more used to Zoom. So if anything pops up, Sarah, I'll let you kind of pipe in and you can tell me. Think about what were the positive things that happened, or positives that might have come from the first lockdown for you. Was there anything positive? Did you realize how much you love swimming? You know, sometimes when it's that thing you love the most is taken away for a short period of time, you realize how much you love it, and maybe you felt more motivated getting back into the pool. Maybe you got to spend more time at home with your family, which you don't usually get to do. Maybe you learned a new skill. Maybe you were just someone who baked banana bread and has perfected your banana bread, whatever it might have been for you.
Sorry, I'm going to just interrupt you. Yeah. I'm seeing that there are a lot of people saying that they can't hear anything.
Oh, right. Okay.
So yeah, can you just, Jessie, can you just check that you've got your?
Yeah, it says people can hear you.
It says people can hear you. Okay, and I can hear you. Yeah, I'm getting quite a few comments though.
Okay, I've turned it back on. How is that this time? Any better? Can people still hear me now?
Can people still hear you? Can somebody?
If someone wants to indicate if they couldn't hear me, can they hear me better now?
I'm wondering if they can hear me.
Yeah, maybe. I'll just, my control panel is saying that my microphone is on.
Yeah, as does mine. Yeah. Hang on, I'm gonna.
How are people?
And nobody's responding, so that's why I'm wondering it to me either. So I'm just wondering if they can't hear either of us. Yeah, that's the problem.
Okay. I'm just looking. Yeah, it has everything on the control panel that I can see is telling me that people can hear you, people can see you, and people can see
Yeah.
your screen. That's all I know. I'm seeing, yeah. Oh, I've just seen your message come in there.
Yeah, that's just so I've just asked people if you can somebody please type in the chat and just let us know whether you can, because we seem to be having issues with the sound. No, lots of people cannot hear it. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not really sure.
I'm getting, no, our pictures are showing they cannot hear anything. It just says the webinar will start shortly. Okay, I did start the webinar. Okay, hang on.
Check. So I'm reconnecting.
Okay, apologies everybody for that. I think that we did not have the, I'm hoping everybody can hear now. Can somebody maybe type in the question in the chat box and let us know if we're good to go? I've got, yeah, okay. Okay, it seems to be all sorted out. So yeah, sorry about that, Jessie. Maybe we can start.
No worries. Can people, I'll start again. Can people hear me as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, all good.
So look, I'll just repeat what I'd said there because I don't want anyone to have missed out on anything from that because I just had obviously blank pictures. So what I said was just that the first thing we're going to look at is we're going to look at some coping strategies specific to COVID, which are strategies you will be able to take forward into your own swimming. And then after that, we're going to look at more performance specific because I want to use this time as an opportunity to develop some skills you might not be able to develop when you are in full training. So this is a time, and that's what we're going to look at here. So in case you were wondering what this picture meant, I was describing it in lots of detail, but I'll explain it again. So I like to use this image for kind of the situation we're in here in 2020. That dry landscape kind of looks like 2020. It's been kind of challenging. It's been tough. We've been in and out of the pool. We've just all been struggling with it. And maybe this little yellow flower who's managed to bloom despite the difficulties, that's what we want to try and get from 2020. Rather than looking back on it and think this was a really tough year and it was just a waste, what did I develop and what did I learn from it? And that's what we're going to look at first. So this is how far we've gotten. So this is something I do a lot with athletes. I do it all the time with athletes, is either reflecting or debriefing on competition performances, on training sessions, to kind of learn from what happened to make the next time better. So that's what we're going to do with lockdown. We're in a privilege. It's a strange, is it a privileged position? Maybe, maybe not, but we have the last lockdown to have learned from to make hopefully this one a little bit better for ourselves. So I want you guys at home to think about it. And if you want to throw some ideas into the chat box, by all means do, or just be thinking while you're sitting there listening. First of all, think back to the first lockdown, back in kind of obviously the nicer, brighter weather that we had. What were the kind of positive things that happened for you? Maybe positive things that came as a result of the first lockdown. You know, is it that you really realized how much you loved to swim and how motivated you were going back to the pool when you had so much time away from it? Maybe you got to work on skills that you don't usually get to work on. Maybe you developed some strength or flexibility. Or maybe you just did stuff away from the pool altogether and spent more time with family, learned how to bake. I know a lot of people were making banana bread. I didn't really get into it. So what were the kind of positive things? That's the first kind of point to think about. And then we think about lockdown as well. Think about what didn't go so well. What are the things that I could have done better? What could have gone better for me? And is there anything looking back that I would change now that I have the opportunity to do it again? And I think that's a really important one, is to look back, and instead of looking back and thinking about it as a really negative time, look at it as a time that I can learn a lot from. So thinking about particularly the negative things, were they in my control? Okay, you couldn't go to school, that was frustrating. You couldn't go to training, you couldn't see your friends as much as normal. They were out of your control. But were there other things that you could have done better? Like, were you quite demotivated and having really long lie-ins or putting off training when you could have been doing a little bit more? So thinking about, were the things that didn't go well in your control? And if they were, you have an opportunity to change them. So think about, okay, I've recognized a couple of things that I didn't do so well or didn't go so well for me in the last lockdown. how am I going to make sure I learn from that and make this time better? You know, how am I going to learn from those lessons and apply them to this lockdown? So that's the first kind of thing, is to use the last lockdown. And if we want, you know, if anyone has any ideas in the chat box, I haven't seen anything pop up yet, but if anyone has any ideas of positives or things they want to work on, by all means, throw them into the chat there and we can throw them in here. I've left it blank because this is for you guys to think about. So maybe even an exercise at home is this, you could do this, you know, do this for yourself to really learn from the last lockdown, rather than, because it's very easy to look at this as a real negative time and just be frustrated. This could be a time to actually really look back and learn. Okay, and then the next thing I want to look at is the idea of focusing on the controllables. And this was obviously shared on social media during the week. And it's a big thing we're hearing a lot, is the idea of focus on what you can control the controllables, don't worry about what's out of your control. And we're hearing that a lot on social media, and we're hearing it being talked about all the time. But what does that actually mean? Like, what do we have control over? What do we not have control over? And, you know, I'll just talk you through a little bit of that. And this is something that's really applicable in your training when you finally get back into the pool. So if you think about it, you've got your three kind of circles here. So in that middle circle is you and all the things that you can control. Little bit outside of you are the things that you might be able to influence. You don't have full control, but you might have a little bit of control over how you can influence certain things, and we'll talk about that. And then the biggest, widest circle are all those things that are fully out of your control that you have to either learn to adapt to or accept. And most of them are to do with the kind of lockdown restrictions at the moment. So let's have a little look at that. What does that mean? So if we start on the outside, what are the things we can't control at the moment? So I've made these quite general. So we can't control time, we can't go back in time, we can't skip forward and move past this few weeks. Obviously, we can't control COVID. We have maybe a little bit of influence when we abide by the rules. And government decisions in terms of the lockdown restrictions and all those kind of things they've implemented to control the virus, we can't do anything about them. We can't do anything about what other people do. And I think that's really important when it comes to sport and your competitors, is you can't control other people. You can't control what they think, how they act, how they feel. And we can't control the weather. You know, we've been kind of hit and miss with the weather at the moment. I got out for a walk, thankfully, before it started to rain, because, you know, it's darker, it's colder, it's not as nice as it was during the last lockdown, but we can't do anything about that. The next thing are the things we have an influence over, so they're not fully in our control. And you might notice I included my emotions in this. And you're probably thinking, but I thought, you know, my emotions, I have control over them. And actually, do we have full control over our emotions? Not really. Our emotions are more of a response, like an automatic response to something happening. So say like you hear a funny joke and you laugh, or you see something sad, or something sad happens and you cry. You don't choose to cry, you don't choose to laugh, but you do then have a choice in how you respond to that emotion and how it makes you feel. So if you feel frustrated and angry because you can't go training and you're so annoyed and it's so unfair, you can either lash out and get angry with people, or you can just accept the situation that we're in. Other things that you can influence are, you know, other people that are kind of close to you, those significant others, family, friends. You can influence their motivation. So maybe if you decide to go meet up with your friend to go for a run, you know, maybe your neighbor lives in or one of your training partners lives in that 5K, you're not feeling that motivated and they tell you, let's go for a run. They've motivated you, and vice versa. You might have an influence on people's opinions. The energy you bring to the room can influence people, other people's choices, all those kind of things. But what's most important to focus on is what you have full control over. So they can be really basic things like your sleep. So not necessarily falling asleep, that's hard to control, but the things you do to get there, you know, putting your phone away half an hour before bedtime, having a regular bedtime, regular bedtime and wake time, you know, having a nice before bed routine. You can control what you put into your mouth, so your nutrition. You can control, sorry, I'll pop up there in the corner. You can control your training, how much you do, what you decide to do. But what's also really important, what sometimes gets forgotten about, is all the internal things you can control. Your mindset and your attitude could be a really positive mindset to a difficult situation. This is a challenge, I don't like this, but I'm going to make the best of it. I'm going to work on some strength exercises at home. I only have a band you know, to put around my knees, and I'm going to make the best of that and improve the weaknesses that I have. Or you could just decide, this is unfair, I hate this, and have a negative attitude and a negative mindset. The choices you make are fully in your control, what you pay attention to. So if you're following other people on Instagram and watching them training and getting annoyed, or tuning into all the news bulletins and getting really panicked, again, with your focus is the same, and then how you decide to respond. So a really important thing to remember, and we will look back to this now when we talk more about performance-specific strategies. Okay, so those are just some kind of COVID specific, but again, there is transferability to your swimming. So now we're going to look at some more performance strategies and things. These are things I would be working on with the athletes that I'm working with in the Institute across all the different sports I work with. So the first thing that you can be doing at home when you're away from the pool is building your confidence. So again, I've left this blank. I want you guys just to think about the most confident swimmer you know. It could be someone you train with, or it could be the likes of Michael Phelps. It could be someone you really look up to, or it could be someone on the Irish team like Shane Ryan, who's just been breaking records all around at the ISL. Think about what makes that person confident. What are the things about them that you see them as being confident? Why do you see them as being confident? And just think about that for a second, because if you want to build your confidence, you need to recognize what a confident athlete looks like, because if you have an idea of what a confident swimmer looks like, it's easier to kind of build that confidence yourself. So just have a think about that. And again, if you want to pop anything into the chat box about what are the things that make a swimmer confident, it could be, you know, previous results. So maybe they've won races before, so they know they're confident because they know how to win. Maybe they've been training really hard all year and they're improving in training. Maybe they're just the tallest. You know, not very controllable, but if they're very tall, they might feel physically confident because they feel like they're imposing over their other athletes. What are the things that make a swimmer confident? So just have a think about that for yourself. And then bring that back to you. And a lot of what we do in sport, and a lot of what you guys do day to day when you go to the pool, is working on getting better at stuff, working on improving weaknesses, picking out what you're not good at and improving them. And a lot of what I do then is more of a strength-based kind of approach, where I help athletes to recognize what they're already good at. Because obviously I'm not training an athlete, I'm not working in the pool with them, I'm not in the gym, but I'm there to help recognize an athlete and help boost their confidence by helping them recognize, here's the things you're already good at. So when it comes to that, it's about knowing your strengths. So rather than thinking about all the things that you are going to work on, you know, think about the things you've just said that make an athlete confident or a swimmer confident. How many of those do you actually have at the moment? And maybe how would you rank them out of 10 for yourself? And think about all your strengths across all these different areas. So physical strength, maybe you have really strong legs, so you have a really good kick. Or tactical. Tactical could be in terms of how you pace your races if you're in a longer race. Technical, so that could be your stroke, that could be how you hold your body in the water. I'm not a swimmer, so I'm not going to throw out too many examples and get them wrong. And then obviously psychological things. What are your psychological strengths? Are you very calm under pressure? Do you not get too nervous at races? You're able to maintain your composure, or you're very focused, you're very disciplined in your approach, and you make your choices based on what you want out of swimming. So just thinking about, rather than always recognizing all the things, and it's funny whenever I sit down with athletes, and I can sit down with athletes who've been to Olympics or are trying to win, you know, major level competitions, and they're really bad at recognizing their strengths, really bad at writing down a list of what they're good at. But yet, if I ask them, where are your weaknesses? What are you working on? What do you need to get better at? We could write lists and lists and lists. So for you, it's to start flipping that mindset, not forget about what you're not good at and what you need to work on. They're really important. But also, if you want to feel confident, you need to recognize that when you stand on the start line and you're up on those blocks, you want to know that here's all the things that I'm good at that I'm bringing to this race today. And that's something you can start with now. So just writing that down, and you could even make like a little, you know, square on a paper, or you could do it in a PowerPoint presentation, whatever way you want. Have your 4 sections and write out those 4 skills. Now, tactical might be a harder one to come up with because that might not be relevant to you. But what are the skills that I have in these areas that I bring to my race as I am now? And what's great about that is you can keep adding to it as you improve. So you've taken an example from my own little brother here. He, for anyone who isn't an athletics fan, Thomas won a European bronze medal at the European Athletics Championships in 2018, and in Rio in 2016 he placed 4th in the 400-meter hurdles. So really good athlete. And this is just a quote that he had for after winning that bronze medal. So as he says here, when I came off hurdle 8, so there's 10 hurdles in a race. So hurdle 8 is when it's really starting hurting. It's probably the last 50 of a 200, really starting to burn, everything's hurting, and you're trying to just kick for home. So when I came off hurdle 8 and I still had nearly 100 meters to go, now I can nearly hear him saying in his Waterford accent, I was just like, nah, this French guy is mine. I'm getting this. I'd be confident in my finish, so I just thought it's there and it's mine. So Thomas was in a battle for that bronze medal with a guy from France in the lane beside him. And if you haven't ever watched him run, he's one of those athletes that goes out kind of slow. So for the first 200 meters, you think he's coming dead last and he hasn't a hope. But we all know that his strengths lie in his kick at the end. He always has a 6th gear for those last kind of 100 meters, 70 meters or so. So he always pulls it back, and he comes from back of the field and pulls all the way through. And he knows that as well. So he's able to go into a race, and even though he could be sitting in 7th or 8th for most of the race, he's confident that he knows when his strength is going to kick in, he'll be absolutely fine. And you guys want to be like that as well. You want to go into a race knowing that I don't need to panic because I know I have this in my armory. This is where my strength is. And it doesn't have to be the specific strength. You don't have to have the kick at the end, but it's just you guys need to really know what I'm good at and how I'm going to use this here. And the next way to build confidence is called evidence gathering. It's a little activity I do with athletes of all ages, and I really like it because it's really, really simple, but can be really effective. So again, you want to look at all the reasons. So I call it evidence gathering. It's like being a scientist trying to prove a theory. So the theory is, and I might say to an athlete, okay, tell me what your goal is for the year. And a lot of people I'm working with want to qualify for Tokyo. And obviously there's lots of things I need to work on between now and next year to improve and get closer to that qualifying time. But what we want to look at is what are the reasons or the evidence that you are good enough to achieve that goal right now. So you've set that goal. We are going to be working on things for the next few months, but what are all the reasons why you are good enough or nearly good enough to achieve that goal as you are now? So, you're trying to prove the theory that, yeah, I can win national championships because I look at all these reasons. So those things that you've done that might make you feel confident could be, well, I won nationals last year, so I have a good chance of winning again this year. My training has been going really well. I'm seeing my strength is improving in the gym. I'm not in an exam year, so maybe I'm in TY, so I have a bit more free time to do a bit more training. Or maybe you're just enjoying it more. Maybe you're actually just loving training at the moment and it's making you want to work harder. So what are all the reasons? And again, writing all those down. And what's the beauty of this as well is as you get better, you're adding to that list. So they can't be taken away from you. You're only going to add to that list. So that's a really nice exercise. And I get athletes, again, even senior athletes, to write that down so they have it. And again, so it's when you're on the blocks and all those little doubts start to come into your head, you can think about that handwritten or that typed out list of evidence to say all the reasons why I should be confident. These are my strengths. These are the things that I'm good at. This is how hard I've been working. Here's all the evidence to say I'm capable of achieving my goal today. And it kind of, thinking like that kind of pushes all those niggles and all those negative thoughts out of your head. So that's confidence building. It's something you can start right now after this workshop. And again, to just kind of illustrate that, I've used Annalise Murphy, who won a silver medal at the Olympic Games in Rio in 2016 in sailing. So she spent 6 months of kind of 2015 into 2016 training in Rio to get to know the venue, because unlike swimming, which is a kind of like athletics, is at one end of the spectrum, sailing is at the other end in terms of all the variables and all the things they need to know. She has tides, she has other boats that are going to get in the way. They don't have lanes, obviously, like in the pool. They have to consider the weather, they have to consider the tide, they have to consider the winds. There's so many variables to consider. So she wants to get to know the area. And that was how she built her evidence, was her knowledge of the course. She knew it inside out. She knew where the wind shifts were going to be. She knew what the tides were going to be like. and felt really, really prepared. And that was where her confidence came from, was having the evidence, knowing I'm really prepared going into this. So again, just 2 examples of athletes and how their confidence has helped them achieve their results. Okay, so we all know about goal setting, and it's something that is kind of a sports psychologist bread and butter. And I think you all guys all know about how to set goals. You've probably thought about short, medium, or long-term goals. And the way I look at it, instead of doing that, is to look at them from an these come up very slow. From an outcome, performance, and process goals. So I don't really work in short, medium, and long-term goals as much. So what these mean are, the outcome goal is where you might want to place in a race. So you want to, qualify through to the final, or you want to get onto the podium, or you want to, those kind of outcomes. Performance goals might be a bit more specific in terms of the time, what time you want to achieve, what time, qualifying times you're kind of going for. So they're a little bit more specific outcome goals. And then the process goals is where my focus is, because if you think about the outcome and the performance goals, they're not really fully in your control. They are things that come as a result of your processes. So the things that you do, the steps you take between now and the race and during the race to get the outcome that you want to achieve. So process goals could be things you're working on at the moment, specific things that you need to look at in the gym and in the pool from technical point of view, just general physical and fitness point of view, getting stronger. It could be maybe you need to work on recovery strategies or your nutrition. They're kind of all process goals. And again, when you come to race day, your process goals will be in terms of how you prepare, your warm up, getting all through all those steps in warm up, and then your race plan. So that's where I like to work with athletes, because they're in your control. So if you think about it like this, as imagine where your goal is the top of that mountain, and to try and get there, you want to set as many process goals or as many steps to get there as possible. Because imagine if your only goal, say your goal is to win national championships, hopefully they go ahead next year. And all you've thought about to get to that goal is, I need to get my kick needs to be stronger. And that's all you've thought about. So imagine take away all those little stepping stones and you just leave one in for your kick. And what happens if your kick doesn't improve? Does it mean you won't win? Not necessarily, but does it mean you're confident in winning? Maybe less so. So having lots of process goals means there's lots of areas you can be working on and focusing on and making lots of little improvements. So it's like having lots of stepping stones to get across that body of water, that river. So when you set process goals, you want to be thinking about all the areas they're going to add to you getting better. So the way I do it is, sometimes I use this process goal setting pyramid. So I used my own athletics career. Now I'm retired now, but this is the goal that I would have set for myself and what I would have set as my kind of processes. So my outcome goal, my overall outcome goal that I wanted to achieve during my career was to break the national record for the 400-meter hurdles. Excuse me. Unfortunately, I didn't achieve that. I came second overall, and that's where I'll stay hopefully for a while. But that was the goal I set for myself, and I knew what I needed to achieve. So if you think about the pyramid, I thought about the bottom layer of that pyramid as the foundation, the ones that were specific to me that I needed to improve or I needed to be working on in order to achieve that. So if you look at that, plyometric strength is that kind of elastic kind of ability. And that was something that it was a strength of mine. So I wanted to keep it really strong. So it wasn't necessarily something I was working to improve. It was something I was very good at. So I wanted to make sure it was really, really good. Speed endurance I was pretty good at, and as a 400-meter hurdler, you need to have a lot of speed endurance. So that would be one of my foundational goals. Confidence, I think every athlete needs to have confidence pretty high up in their priorities of goals. And left leg technique. So in the hurdles, in the 400-meter hurdles, you change legs depending on your stride pattern and how many steps you take in between. And I was a much better right leg lead hurdler than left leg lead. So I knew I needed to improve my left leg technique if I wanted to cut the time, shave some seconds and some milliseconds off my time to get to that national record. And then obviously it doesn't mean these ones are less important. It was just these 4 at the bottom were my foundation kind of process goals. Sighting the hurdle is just kind of a technical thing in terms of being able to plan what stride pattern I was going to take or what leg I was going to jump the hurdle on. So it was literally looking at the hurdle, which is about 35 meters apart. Aerobic capacity, which you can all, you all know what that is, that general fitness which you need to have when you're doing any kind of endurance or longer sprint kind of event. Obviously speed, and then core strength for when I was starting to fatigue. It used to kind of rock and roll, so I needed to make sure that was good, and my stride pattern. So they were just some of the goals that I would have set for myself that I needed to achieve in order to set that national record. And what was great about having so many is that if I didn't achieve all of them, okay, it didn't happen for me, unfortunately, but I had a lot of injuries. But if I didn't achieve all of these, it didn't mean I wouldn't break the national record. But by focusing on all these different things, and obviously I could have included nutrition, sleep, balancing college or school with training. There's so many areas that you can consider in that. And these are just some of the ones for the example. So I'll be sending this out to you guys, and it might be an idea to print this off for yourselves and actually think about it. And you can put as many into each brick as you want. You can have 100 process goals. There's no limit. Obviously, the more you have, the better. You just don't want to have too many that you're completely overwhelmed. So putting those in and thinking about what your goal might be just for next year. You don't have to think about your whole career, but just for next year. Maybe you're thinking about nationals. Maybe you're thinking about getting onto another level. What are those goals? Think about just something to do at home. And when you are setting those goals, you may or may not have heard of SMART goal setting. So keeping those goals SMART, which is what we're going to talk about here. So SMART goals are specific. So you could put into your goal setting pyramid that I want to get stronger. It's quite vague, isn't it? So if you get stronger, does that mean if you lift an extra 0.5 of a kilo in the gym, does that mean your goal is achieved? Well, you've gotten stronger, but is it going to really have that much of an effect on your training if you're only lifting in half a kilo more? So making it specific, I want to, improve my bench press by this much, or I want to be able to do this many weighted chin-ups in a row before I fatigue. These are the kind of ways you'd be setting it. And make them measurable, so you can actually measure that you're improving? So again, get something like getting stronger, increasing my squat by 5 kilos. That's measurable because you can do your squat and see how you're improving. Whereas if you just, if you kind of keep it vague and it's not easy to measure, it's hard to know, are you actually achieving it? And again, then achievable and realistic. Is this goal something that you can actually achieve? I set myself quite a high goal in setting the national record. It was something that was realistic and it was achievable, but I was going to have to work really, really hard to get it. But it was something that was achievable for me. If I had said I want to win Olympic gold medal, probably not as realistic and not as achievable for myself because, obviously I wasn't setting limits, but I kind of knew where I was at. So setting a goal like that was kind of setting myself up for failure. Now I did set myself up for failure because I didn't achieve my goal, but I worked really hard to get there. So I never see it as a failure. I just see it as like I ran out of time. So setting something that you have to, strive for it. So setting it a little bit higher than where you are right now. So you have to work hard, but not so high that you're never going to reach it, because all that's going to do is demotivate you. And then finally, make it timely. So kind of say when you want to have set this goal. Because if you just say, I want to get stronger by the time I finish swimming, it's not specific, it's vague. So you want to say, by the time, I'm finished in junior, I want to have achieved this, or by the time we get to nationals, I want to have done this in training. And then you have a time limit on it. And if you don't achieve it then by the time limit, you kind of look back and think, okay, how do I need to reevaluate and set this goal again? So you could think about how could you be applying SMART goals to what you're doing right now. So maybe that could be something you could be doing is, I want to use this time away from the pool to improve this weakness. So I know maybe my hip mobility is not very good. So I want to be able to, maybe you're using, now I couldn't do it if I tried, but getting into the splits, or it could be is a marker of your hip mobility or something like that. Something that you can be working on right now so that you feel like you're progressing, that when you get back into the pool, you at least achieve something when you couldn't swim. So maybe think about how you could be setting some SMART process goals at the moment. And something that gets overlooked a lot, but I think it's so valuable, is actually tracking your progress. So I work a lot with cycling, and they do a lot of progress. They track everything. They have their watches, they have Strava, they have all these different things. So they have all the numbers and measurements in the world. But what I encourage them to do is, and I have mine here beside me, an old school paper diary. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. Now there's fancier ones available, but I always just get a plain one every year. And actually kind of tracking your progress that you're making towards your goals. So whether it's every day after training or after you've done whatever you're doing during lockdown, you actually write down how you felt it went. So rather than just relying on the numbers, which are called objective measures, so numbers like how your time of your reps, how many reps you achieved, blah, blah, blah. You want to put down what are called your objective or your subjective measures, which are things about how you felt about the session, how you know, what were the factors going into it. So maybe if you think about going into a training session in the pool and it wasn't a great session, you might give it like a 6 out of 10 in terms of quality. But you write down there, actually, I had an exam this week and I didn't sleep very well because I was up late studying. So I wasn't going to have the quality that I wanted from that session. And what having that kind of a track and having that kind of what's called subjective measuring and having that kind of your feelings written down about your sessions is that you can look back and learn from that. So if you look back and just see your training diary, all it says is, this was my session, this are the times I did. And you don't have an explanation about why it was so good or why the times were not so good, your confidence is not going to, you know, you might affect your confidence in a negative way. Whereas if you have a session, you write down what the session was, maybe a mark you give it out of 10, why you gave it that mark, and anything that you could have done, you kind of want to do better next time. So for me, it could have been, you know, I went to training, I gave myself a 5 out of 10 for the session, but it was absolutely lashing rain, and I hate running in the rain. I was really tired because I'd come straight from the library. I had been working on an assignment all day and I was just really stressed out. So actually just being at the track was enough. If I had just written down the times that I achieved in a session like that, I might be really disappointed and think, oh my God, am I behind where I should be? Whereas at least if I had an explanation about how my training went, I have an understanding it doesn't affect my confidence. So kind of tracking how your training is going, tracking if you're progressing towards your goals, and then having, you know, and having an explanation for why you might not be tracking towards it so it doesn't affect your confidence. So get yourselves a little diary, start them maybe in the new year, because it's probably going to be hard to get one in now in November. But think about that for the new year, about tracking your progress, writing down how you're moving towards it, because every time you improve a little bit, your confidence is going to get better. And oh yeah, this is what I was just saying. So maybe after training, you can make a little note of your progress. So what went well? What am I happy with? What am I seeing progression in? And why did it go well? Was it because you just felt in really good shape? Were you get your cover? You felt really recovered from yesterday's session? And then again, what didn't go well? What could have gone better? Why didn't it go well? How will I learn from that? So again, you're kind of recognizing where you're progressing, and you're also learning from your sessions. And I think it's a really good way to add to your progress in training. So self-talk is a big thing, and I think we're all guilty of doing these kind of things. So look, this is kind of an example of some things we've probably all thought to ourselves. And when it comes to self-talk, which is just those kind of things that we think to ourselves, and it's often quite negative. How I would usually, when I start to talk about this to athletes, is imagine the things that you say to yourself when you're feeling kind of negative. Would you ever say those things out loud to your friend? And often we don't. So my advice is to start going through this lockdown, speaking to yourself like you would your friend. So maybe you've woken up and you're meant to do a training session of some sort at home and you're just not in the mood, you just don't want to do it. And you start telling yourself you're not a dedicated swimmer, you know, you're obviously not motivated. Why should you be, you know, why is your coach putting so much time into you? Because you're not motivated and you're so lazy. Would you say that to your friend or your training partner if they woke up and just felt really tired and demotivated because of lockdown? Would you say all those things out loud to them? Hopefully not, and probably not. So start thinking the way and speaking to yourself like you would to a friend. So there's two ways of kind of looking at that. There's two ways of kind of starting to change your self-talk. The first is called thought challenging. So we've probably all had thoughts like this: is I'm not good enough. We've probably all thought something like that. You know, you've turned up at a race and you know, it's your first time in a new age bracket, or it's your first time competing at national championships, and you go, oh my God, I'm not good enough, I shouldn't be here. Instead of thinking like that, tell yourself that you qualified to be here, you are good enough. You wouldn't be at something, you know, that you weren't ready for. A thought that every athlete that I've worked with, and I know I had them myself, is I didn't do enough training. I should have trained harder. I should have done more. I could have done more. I'm not ready. Probably all thought that before when we're in the call room, is especially where all these thoughts tend to come up. I'm not ready. I haven't done enough. Just tell yourself that, you know, you did everything your coach said should be. You did everything your coach asked of you. That obviously doesn't really make much sense. You did everything the coach asked of you. You did all your training sessions. There was nothing more you could have done. You're ready. And I would say those kind of thoughts are so normal on race day. You never feel like you've done enough. Just like when you go into an exam, whoever feels like they've done all the study they can, I've done everything, I'm ready. More often than not, you don't feel like that. And then maybe you're standing on, you know, you're walking out to your race and you're looking at your competitor who, like that, you're thinking, I'll never beat them. Again, challenge it. And think to yourself, okay, this is a new race. It doesn't matter what happened before. This is a new opportunity to challenge them. So these are kind of thought challenging. So you're kind of challenging, you're kind of arguing back with that thought, because the thought is, like, you can see those first examples are like statements. I'm not good enough. I'm not ready. I'll never beat them. They're kind of statements that you need to challenge and say, hang on now, this is a new race. Doesn't matter what happened before. You've done everything you can. So just start thinking about challenging those thoughts. And then another way to kind of help your make your self-talk more positive and more helpful is to start reframing it, which is where you start thinking about what are the negative thoughts that I'm saying to myself and how can I make them work for me. So it's called reframing. So you might be thinking, you're going into a race thinking, I need to qualify for this competition, or you're turning up to training and there's a competition looming on the horizon. You're thinking, I need to qualify for this. I have to qualify for nationals. Things like, I should win this race. Probably all thought it. I should win this race. I'm the fastest here, so I should win it. Or I have to beat so and so because I'm expected to, or whatever. Again, he or she that is way better than me, and I'm so tired I can't keep going, which you've probably all thought at some stage during training and racing. So how can we reframe them to either make them more positive or just make them more helpful for us? So first of all is recognizing how you're actually speaking to yourself. So you can see you've got the I need to, I should, I have to. That's kind of pressure language, isn't it? Like, I need to win, I have to win, I have to qualify for this competition, I have to beat X, I need to. They're all quite pressurizing ways of thinking about it. So I'm not saying that you don't need to qualify for this competition, but maybe to make it more helpful is to kind of think about it that I don't need to qualify for this competition, but I want to. Like, you don't really need to do anything except kind of breathe, eat, sleep. Everything else is a want if you think about it. So you really want to qualify for this competition. And if you don't, you'll obviously be really disappointed, but it doesn't mean you need to. So straight away, saying I want to doesn't have the same kind of pressure and expectation. Then you might have, instead of saying I should win this race, it's I'm capable of, or I can win, because sport doesn't work like that. You may be the best person there and you might have won every race, but that doesn't mean you should or you're entitled to win the next one. So instead of going into saying I should win this race because I've won all the rest of them this year, I can win this race because I've won all of them this year. So instead of there being pressure, you turn it into kind of a confidence thing. Again, I have to is I want to. You know, you don't have to beat anyone, but you really want to beat them. And then if you're concerned about your competitors and that they're better, instead of seeing it as they're so much better than me, that they're way more experienced, they've been racing for longer, or they've been at this level for a lot longer. I'm so tired, I can't keep going. Tough one, because we've all felt like that. And when you feel like often what happens in that scenario is your brain responds before your body does. So if your brain is telling your body you're too tired and you can't keep going, it will respond and it won't keep going. So what you tell it instead is, I'm meant to be tired. So you might be coming towards the last 100 of an 800 meter freestyle, for example. You're meant to be tired at that point because you've just raced 700 meters of swimming. So instead of it being, I'm too tired, I can't keep going, it's, I'm meant to be tired now, but I'm prepared for it because I've trained for it. So it's kind of accepting how you're feeling in that situation. I am tired, but I can keep going. I've done it before, I'm trained for it, I'm ready for it. So straight away you can see how negative thoughts can be made into something a bit more, not always necessarily positive, because if we were to switch the I'm so tired I can't keep going to a direct positive, we'd be thinking, you're fine, you can keep going, it's all grand. But sometimes that feels kind of false, doesn't it? So sometimes it's about just making the thought help you. So rather than it being fighting against it, making it help you, even if it's not going to be the most positive of thoughts. Okay, we all, like, we can't talk about psychology of performance without talking about nerves. And I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time talking about nerves themselves, because as Roger Federer says here, that he's glad he gets nervous, it means he still cares. And what I'm trying to get at here is that nerves are normal. Nerves are part and parcel of competition, just the way when you swim, you feel lactic. It's just something that happens. And the sooner you can learn to accept nerves, the better. Because most of the people a lot of people that I start to work with often come to me saying, I get really nervous, I want to get rid of them. The first thing I kind of say is, can't get rid of nerves, but we can learn to accept them and control them. So when it comes to nerves, it's about recognizing that actually the nerves are like an emotion. They're just a response to something that's happening. So if you think about when you get nervous, you have, beating heart, maybe you have sweaty palms, butterflies in your stomach, you can't concentrate, your thoughts are flying at 1,000,000 miles an hour. That's a response to something that you've been thinking about. The same way as when you watch something funny, you laugh, you wake up in the morning and think, oh my God, it's nationals today, this is the biggest race of the year, and suddenly you feel nervous because you've just reminded yourself of something big that's coming. And nerves are not necessarily a bad thing. They can actually be a really good thing, because all those horrible feelings that nerves are is just adrenaline running through your body. And actually you want that adrenaline to get a performance, because you want to do better in a race than you have at training. So you want that extra little kick the adrenaline's going to give you. And if you can learn to accept that, okay, the butterflies aren't very nice, they don't feel very comfortable, I don't really like that my heart is racing, but that's normal and it's part of it and it's what's going to get me my results. The same way as no one likes to feel lactic at the end of the race, but there's nothing you can do about it. So instead, if we can kind of understand how nerves actually affect performance, we don't have to be as scared of them, and we can kind of recognize how it might be affecting other aspects. So when we're nervous, there is a chance that you can start to see the race as a threat. And by that, I mean it's something to be afraid of. So you might have been looking forward to competing at nationals all year. It's been your goal all year. You're so excited. And finally, the weekend has come. You're traveling up to Dublin. You're going to the NAC. And suddenly you're driving into the gates and you see the building and you go, oh my God, I don't want to do this race anymore. I'd prefer to be anywhere but here. And that's just your nerves affecting how you're feeling and how you're reacting. Because when you're nervous, your emotions in your brain take over, and they take over the logical part of your brain. So the logical part of your brain, the rational part of your brain, is the part that told you that, like, you've been training really hard, you're looking forward to this has been the goal all year. Emotions take over on race day and you start to see, oh my God, I don't want to race this is a threat. What if I don't do well? What if I don't get the result that I wanted? And it's a threat to all of those things you've been working on. When you're nervous and your emotions take over like that, your attention gets narrower. So that could be why you often forget things on race day, or you've left something at home, or you've brought your old goggles that don't work anymore, or, for me, it could have been bringing the 2 right-hand spikes rather than a right and left of the shoes. Your attention is a bit narrower, and that's, you can feel distracted on race day. So that's where having your bag packed the night before and have everything planned and ready to go, so that all you have to think about is the race. There's no other thinking has to be done. We may become more aware of how our body feels when we feel nervous. So you might wake up on race day, you think, okay, this is an important day. I really have to swim well today, it's nationals. And then you start to think, oh my God, my legs feel really heavy. And you've probably all felt that at some stage, that your body doesn't feel good, your legs feel heavy, you feel tired, it doesn't feel good. and suddenly then you get scared because you don't think your body's going to be ready. When actually, in fact, we probably feel like that every morning. It's just now that you're nervous, your attention is narrower and you're more aware of how your body feels because you needed to perform today. But actually, if you were to think about every morning how you, when you wake up and you paid that much attention to how your legs feel, they probably feel a bit heavy and dead anyway. And finally, we make decisions based on our emotions. So that could be in terms of going off the race, going against what the race plan you and your coach decided was. It could be, you know, doing extra stuff in warm up because you've seen someone else doing it and you panic. Or it could be not, you know, not doing the stroke count, for example, because you know it's going to be hard. And when you're feeling tired, you want to it doesn't feel very nice, so you pull back and don't go for the stroke count that you've been practicing. So we make decisions based on our emotions, and often they aren't the right decisions. So now that you know that about nerves, you know, and know that, okay, these things that happen on race day are normal, this is a normal part of it, and just being aware of all of this thing is a good place to start. And now, when you want to try and control those nerves and manage them, there's a few things we can do. So the first thing, I'm bringing it back in, is focusing on what you can control. So if you think about it, the things that are out of your control on race day are the outcome. So the outcome of the race, what time you swim, where you finish, aren't in your control. Obviously the processes you do until the outcome are in your control, but everyone else has the same goal as you, probably to win. You can't control your competitors and what they do, both in and out of the pool. The officials aren't in your control, the crowd, and whether it's noisy and it's loud and it's distracting, the environment, whether it's a really hot pool or a cold pool, or there's, you know, whatever else is going on in the pool and the environment, your teammates, you know, how they perform, how they feel after they perform, and of course your coach. So there's lots of things that you can't control. And if you think about it, what are the things that make you feel nervous on race day? It's probably things that are on that list. Things like the outcome, things like who's going to be against you, who's going to see it, you know, who's going to be in the crowd to actually watch me do it? Am I going to embarrass myself? Those things are out of your control. So again, like we talked about earlier, what is in your control? So your preparation, so that whether that's your training that you've been doing for the weeks leading up to it, or the night before, the day of, your warm-up, the race plan and how you execute it is in your control. The effort, your choices, your attitude, all those things are in your control. And none of those things probably make you feel that nervous. So why focus on the things that make you feel nervous and are out of your control? Starting to switch your attention. Okay, I know I'm nervous. I know I really want to swim fast today, and I know so-and-so is here and I hate racing against them. So what am I going to do about it? Well, I'm going to really stick to my race plan because that's how I'm going to get the best outcome. I'm going to warm up as best I can and do what I always do. And I know I'm really prepared. And I'm going to just choose not to think about the outcome. There's nothing I can do about it. So that's where you're bringing in the controllables again back into your race day. And then there's some breathing exercises, which we're going to kind of finish on here, which is a really simple way of managing the kind of physical feeling of nerves. Because obviously the physical feeling of nerves is the heart beating and all those kind of things. And what these breathing exercises can do can help calm all that kind of those responses in your, you know, physically, but it also gives you something else to think about. Because as I said, those nerves are coming from something that you're thinking about. So you're thinking about the fact that it's a really big race or what you want to achieve. By doing some kind of focused breathing exercises, it gives you something else to think about to take your mind off the things making you nervous. So obviously I can't see any of you. I'm assuming you're all still there. And if you want to do this, I'm going to try this with you guys. So if you're wherever you are at home, get comfortable on your seat. So I'm going to just pull out the seat there. Hopefully you can still see me. And what we're going to do is we're going to try just a couple of breathing exercises to finish off. So the first one is called belly breathing, and belly breathing is actually the natural way that we would have learned to breathe. So if you ever watch a baby breathing, they breathe with their bellies rising and falling, and it's the way we breathe when we're asleep. Excuse me. And as we've gotten older, we've become conditioned to breathe up into our chest, because obviously we obviously stand there and want to keep a flat tummy, so we don't want to stand there with our belly protruding in and out. So it's not that natural to do it, which is why it's a good exercise, because it takes a bit more concentration. So what we're going to do is we're going to put one hand on our chest and one hand on our belly. And that's just to become more aware of what's actually rising and falling. So your chest might actually still rise and fall when you breathe, but what we're going to do is try to really focus on the belly. So you're going to use the muscles in your belly, so in your abdomen, in your core, your diaphragm muscles, which are the ones that are underneath your rib cage. You're going to use all those muscles to try and really fill those lungs. So you're going to fill them, and as you fill them, you're going to imagine you pushing all of the muscles and pushing the belly out forward. So you're trying to create a pot belly. And then on the exhale, you're going to squeeze those muscles in, and you're going to squeeze the air out of the lungs. So it's like you're kind of an accordion, that you're pulling it out and letting everything expand, and then you're pushing it back in. So it's all in the belly. So we're going to try that here. So just take a deep breath, or just take a breath, and when you're ready, we're going to try the belly breathing. So deep breath in through your nose or mouth, whichever you prefer. So deep breath in and push that belly out. It feels a bit weird when you're sitting, I know. So push that belly out. And exhale and squeeze that belly and push all that air out. Deep breath in, push the belly out. And exhale and squeeze. Deep breath in, push the belly out. And exhale and squeeze the air back out. Last time, deep breath in. And exhale and squeeze. So I don't know about you guys, but I already feel a little bit calmer. So that's a really nice one you can be doing if you're in a call room, or you've just arrived at the pool and you're not ready and you're feeling a bit stressed out. Because it gets straight away, because it takes a bit of concentration to do it, your thoughts are not about what the outcome is going to be, or who's here, or who's going to be seeing me racing. So another one you can try takes a bit of counting. So again, it's distracting you. So this is called box breathing. And you can see on these slides, I've included a link to a YouTube video, so you can actually watch it again in your own time in case you forget. So box breathing this time is creating kind of a rhythm in your breathing. So it involves breathing in for 4 seconds, breathing in and inhaling for 4 seconds, then holding that breath for 4 seconds, then exhaling for 4 seconds, and then holding for 4 seconds before you inhale again. So it just creates a nice rhythm, and it stops your breathing, like when you get nervous, from kind of being fast and shallow, and it gives you more control over it again. And that's what's really nice about it. So you can just breathe normally. You can try the box breathing again, or you can just breathe normally into your chest, or whatever way is comfortable for you. So we're going to try box breathing, and I'm going to count us all in. Okay, so when we're ready, we're going to take a deep breath in. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Last one. Inhale. 2, 3, 4. Hold. 2, 3, 4. Exhale. 2, 3, 4. And hold. 2, 3, 4. So again, another nice breathing exercise, bit of counting involved, which means that you have something to be thinking about. Then the last one is just for all those people who are fidgeters out there. I know I'm a fidgeter. When I was nervous, and my hands would be tapping, doing all sorts. So this is one they actually teach to kids in school, and it's called hand breathing, finger breathing, whatever way you want to do it. So instead of counting, this time, now you obviously don't have to be that obvious and have your hand up like this, but I'm doing this so you can see it. So instead of counting it, this time when you're inhaling, you run your finger up outside the outside of your hand, and as you're exhaling, down. So inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. So you could do that once, or you could go back again, and you have control over how fast or how slow you do it. But again, it's just giving you something to do, something to concentrate on, to help you start coping with those nerves. And again, I could have gone into loads of other things here, but these are things that you guys can be actually working on right now in lockdown when you're not near a pool, and start to make yourself feel more ready to get back into the pool and compete.